Hi, welcome to Canadian Framelines, video update week 7. It's the
Mm.
12th of February 2012. I'm Ryder White.
And I'm Alex Caulfield.
Okay, so last week, for any of you who caught my sort of long-winded article on early cinema, we're going to talk a little bit more about early cinema, but Alex and I were talking and we thought that maybe not everybody knows as much as we do or has had no real reason to run into the Super 8mm film format, which is kind of at the core of our project. So we thought we'd give you a little bit of a historical overview of film gauge, ending up in a discussion of Super 8.
Yeah. So as Ryder just said, Super 8 is a gauge of film, and what that means is it is essentially the width of the film image. And when it's projected, obviously it gets a lot bigger, but it's the width of the actual film strip. Initially, there were all sorts of different film formats. Everything was very proprietary at that point in time. Everyone competing to try and sell their product the best or to the most people. And they had all sorts of different gauges, like a 12 gauge or a 9.5 gauge. We've really standardized film gauges since then. So what most people think of is 35 millimeter, which is standard theatrical release format. There's also 70 millimeter, which is IMAX. Then you get down to 16 millimeter, and that is it's really been embraced by independent filmmakers and lower budget filmmakers because it requires half as much celluloid as a 35 millimeter film that takes up for the same amount of time, and therefore it saves you a lot of money. Yeah, and so
And
Ryder.
16mm was developed sort of in the early 20s. 35mm came around to be the standard between 1907 and 1910, somewhere in there. Um, and shortly after 16mm was introduced, it was kind of sloughed off by a lot of DPs and cinematographers at that time, but it was adopted by journalists, war photographers, and those kind of people, used for a lot of newsreels and that sort of thing. Um, Yet it was still not a super affordable format for the home user, and that was really the market that everybody's been looking to branch into in cinema for decades and decades and
Yeah.
decades. So they created something using 16mm film. They thought, if we can cut down the 35mm frame to 16mm and still have a reproducible image, why don't we try to do that again? And so what they came up with was called double run 8mm, and it's a 16mm film strip that's cut in half and only exposes half the height of the frame to result in an 8mm gauge frame. And so what it would do is it would roll the film once through the camera, imaging the left side of the film, and then you would actually flip the reel over and run it the other way. And when they were processing it, they would slice it down the middle. This is called regular 8mm, and there were also cameras that just took like actual 8mm wide film strips, and this was great, but it still lacked something in that it required people to actually thread cameras and load in at least partial, sometimes total darkness. So what they devised ultimately, and this is the most popular of these formats, a number of other companies developed formats as well. This is the Kodak system, and this is the Super 8mm film cartridge. And what this is inside, it's wrapped up and it's kind of like an
Should
old.
I open it all the way?
I don't
No.
think so.
Okay.
Um,
But
it's a plastic box, and it's got two sides. There's a feed side and a take-up side, and it essentially just rolls the film through, and it fits into the side of a Super 8mm camera. Essentially what you do is you just pop this rectangle in here, shut the door, and it's loaded. No threading, no looping, no creating any light leaks or anything like that. It's all self-contained. So the average user could load a film camera in under 10 seconds and be
yeah.
ready to go.
And it also has, you can't see it because there's no, very well because there's no film in there right now, but there's a little window right there, and that would tell you when there was film in it, and it would also tell you when the roll was done, so that you knew you didn't have anything left. It'd have a little exposed or something, I think,
Depending
right?
on the camera.
Depending on the
Sometimes it was
brand.
in the viewfinder or whatnot. But these cameras were incredibly simple. They were sort of the original camcorders. They were the original point and shoot in a way. They had, a taking lens on the front. Most of them were reflex cameras, meaning you could see through the lens. Most of them had a automatic aperture based on some sort of, photo cell inside there. And they had a zoom stick, they had focus, and that was pretty much it as far as your control. They ran generally at a silent speed of 18 frames per second. Some of them ran at 24 frames per second, but that was more or less it. And so you see these cartridges, they also have an address form on the back. And so you'd take this cartridge out of your camera, write your name on the label, and send it to Kodak. They'd process it for you, and you'd be able to watch it within a couple days. And so this was the early format, and this cartridge that we're holding up, Kodachrome 40, became nearly synonymous with Super 8 millimeter for most of its run, and it's only sadly in recent years that this film format has ceased to be produced, and indeed the capability to even process it no longer exists, as it's incredibly complicated. But you get some really fabulous color images.
It's too bad. Didn't Billy Joel have a song called Kodachrome?
I think he did.
Something like that. My mom was singing it to me when I told her about it, and I was confused.
In any case, what we like to shoot most of the time is reversal black and white, and that's a film that can be shot in these cameras in the Super 8 millimeter format, but it can be processed in buckets by hand. It's very easy to do, and it produces a positive image, unlike most photography, which produces a negative image. So you can actually project the strip that's gone through the camera, and there's no need to make prints or anything like that. And that's what we'll be working with.
Yeah, so this camera is what we're going to teach people how to use. And then we're going to send them out there with something very similar to this. And it's 50 feet long, about 3 minutes of film, and they're going to use this to tell us what they think about Canada and how they would represent us and themselves and where they're from. So this is the equipment you're going to get to sink your teeth into when we come visit you.
Be excited. Yeah. Well,
this week. Well, we can tell them what we did this week.
Okay.
Should we? You want to know what we did this week, I hope. So we went to get a commercial vehicle inspection. And because we're halfway through, well, not even half, but because we're partway through the process of turning our vehicle into a motorhome, the guy, who was a little bit of a jerk, I'm going to be honest, he was kind of a jerk, he basically told us off, didn't even want to look at it, and won't give us a commercial vehicle license, or a registration, essentially saying, like, yes, you can drive this around. So now we have a place to keep it until the end of February, where it doesn't have to be insured, and after that we can probably get one more temporary operation permit, but you can't keep getting them right in a row. So basically that'd be 15 more days after that. So we have just over a month to turn this into a motorhome and get it inspected and relicensed as a motorhome. So after panicking, we got to work, and now the inside has been sanded, and there's a rust spot or two that we've bondoed and sanded that down, and it's been primed and painted. And now this week we're hoping to sand down the outside and weather permitting prime the exterior of it. And we also got a little bit started on assembling our darkroom space, but nothing too exciting to report on that front just yet. And I just put a couple pictures up, not too many, but 3 or 4 up from what we were working on today on the Canadian Framelines Facebook page. So if you want to check that out, you can see what it looks like without a giant mural on the inside of our pet bus. So yeah, anyway, that's all I can remember from this week.
It's been a full week.
It really has. So I guess check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/Canadian Framelines, or our production company is facebook.com/Caulfield White, and that has some information on our other narrative projects that we're doing and different things. My Twitter is @ARCaulfield.
I'm @Ryder White.
And we give all sorts of updates at Caulfield White as well, if you're interested in looking at that.
Very great to follow. I talk about my love for hockey a lot.
Yeah, and he talks about really cool events that are going on in Vancouver all the time. In fact, next weekend, follow his tweets, because next weekend there's going to be a great new media show at W2, Friday night.
Check it out.
Yeah,
send us your love. We send you ours.
Bye.
Bye.